Welcome to the Monday, January 12th Education Committee and Supplementary Regular Board Meeting. I would like to take audience recognition on agenda items only. If there is any public comment, if you could come up and sign with Ms. LaPera and you have a 3-minute time limit, and if you could let us know generally where you reside in the district.
Hi, my name is Amy Knorr. I live in Penn Valley. Good evening. I've attended the 2 curriculum committee presentations on the math sequencing proposals, and I support all of the proposed changes. However, I do have serious concerns about the large number of students who are 2 years advanced, which the district now calls accelerated. Before 2011, I recall that 5 to 10% of the students in each grade were in the 2-year advanced track. Now 33% of students are in that accelerated track. I don't understand why this track is necessary or desirable, except for perhaps a much smaller group of gifted math students. I believe an extra year of preparatory math, whether it's Algebra 1 spread over 2 years or more of the 5th and 6th grade math that was missed or skipped, would benefit most of those students. The district's data show that the accelerated students are doing well based on certain criteria. However, the oldest students at this level are only in 10th grade now, and I dare say that some teachers and administrators do not realize the gaps in many of these students' math educations. The true test may be when these students reach calculus. Several years ago, the 2-year advanced group was small, perhaps 20 students in each middle school grade at each school. Now that same group is about 100 students per grade per school. What changed? Have younger students suddenly become that much smarter in math? Why not give the students an extra year of developmental growth? Most of these students do not need to take calculus by 11th grade. They would be much better served by a strong foundation in math in middle school, and in particular algebra, to prepare them for the more difficult math in high school and beyond. My own child, currently in 9th grade Algebra 2 honors and doing well by all external criteria, Keystones, PSSAs, grades, has gaps in her math skills that I believe are due to the 2-year acceleration. She is less competent and confident as a math student than were her older siblings, who were placed at the same math level as she in 5th grade but did not move on to the 2-year advanced level that is current practice. My older children had stronger math skills in high school and were more confident and motivated as math students than is my youngest. From my experience, students who don't feel their fundamental skills in algebra are strong are much less likely to pursue math in the future. With the critical importance of preparing students in the STEM fields, I find this to be of great concern. I asked my son, a chemistry major in college, about this issue. He said algebra teaches you problem-solving skills. If you have a problem you can't solve, you need to rearrange the equations, substitute, mix, and match. This skill set is critical to life and teaches logical thinking. Logic and understanding equations are especially important for computer science as well as all the natural sciences. Given that the math sequencing currently is under review, I am requesting a simultaneous review of the 2-year advanced grouping, the accelerated track. In particular, please consider evaluating each student at the end of pre-algebra, whether that occurs at the end of 6th or 7th grade, so as to determine whether a 1 or 2-year algebra course is appropriate for that student. These mathematical foundations are critical to all that follows in school and in life. Just because most of the accelerated students pass the Keystones and don't appear to be struggling, many students in that group are not as confident or as competent in math as they would have been in the former 1-year accelerated sequence. I think our district could be serving those students better. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your comment.
If you can, thank you.
Hello, everybody. Happy New Year. I'm Lynn Brandsma from Ardmore, and I'm just going to comment very briefly. I have not had a chance to see the presentation. However, I did look through the PowerPoint slides. And the first thing I want to say is just thank you very much to the administration for publicly going through this, giving us a chance to give our feedback on it. That's greatly appreciated. I think most of the administration here know that my son got caught up in the last time, and it was a very, very frustrating experience, to say the least. My only comment has to do with the 4th and 5th grade time period. The one time choosing, so to speak, of which math the students are in. Developmentally, I think, especially boys, but girls too, there's so much growth in the next 3 to 4 years. And to have kind of a one-time shot, I understand there might be another at 5th grade, but even still, that's very young. To have a one-time shot, to have it never looked at again, just goes against what I know in developmental psychology, and I would appreciate a discussion around that point at some time. So, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for your comments. I do want to say that we will take a look at the 2-year advance and begin taking a critical look at that process. So thank you very much for that recommendation. In addition to that, we are simultaneously looking at that 4th and 5th grade transition. So there is a committee that has been formed to look at that as well. We felt that it was extremely important and throughout this process that when we talk about any transition, whether it's at the elementary school, at the middle, or at the high, that all teachers, K through 12, should be represented in that conversation because nothing happens in isolation. So we did try very hard to ensure that when we had these preliminary conversations that there were teachers, K through 12, talking about a particular sequence, whether it was directly impacting that grade level or not. We felt that there was important to, in terms of scaffolding, in terms of transition, in terms of learning prerequisite skill sets prior to that math sequence or that math class, that teachers were aware of and had input in that particular process. So we will take those under advisement. We are looking, currently have a study currently right now in terms of looking at the 4th, 5th grade transition. We expect to come to the board and to the public with additional information, and we will add our analysis to that 2-year advancement as well.
I'll turn the meeting over to Dr. Marseille for some recognition.
Thank you very much. Tonight there are really two recognitions that I'd like to spend some time and honor some individuals for their service. But first, I want to recognize Marion Elementary. It is indeed my pleasure to welcome Marion Principal Ann Heffron and her team tonight for special recognition for extraordinary achievement. In November, the U.S. Department of Education named Marion School a National Blue Ribbon School. Marion is one of 287 public schools to earn this distinction, which is the nation's highest honor for scholastic excellence. Marion was nominated for the award by the Pennsylvania Department of Education last year for exceptional student achievement on state standardized tests. The school then went through this really rigorous process by the Department of Education, reviewing demographics, reviewing information, what makes the school distinctive, school culture, demographics, and other achievement indicators. Marion is one of 14 Pennsylvania schools on the list, and one of 3 traditional public schools in the Commonwealth to be named exemplary high performing. This is the second time that this award has been bestowed to Marion as a National Blue Ribbon, and this is the 7th time. There's been 7 schools in our district who have received this recognition. So I'm extremely humbled tonight to extend our heartiest congratulations to Marion on this wonderful honor. The Blue Ribbon is a reflection of the steadfast commitment to quality public education across this community. Marion, like all schools in this district, has had long-standing high performance, great faculty, exemplary school. It is representative of the Lmsb experience, which really speaks to one of the many reasons why individuals continue to come to Lower Marion and have that experience. which negates some other conversations we've been having, but that's not what we're here for. But we welcome them. So I say this, and I said this earlier, that there's not enough gratitude, not enough time to say thank you to all of our staff for everything they do every single day. And a special thank you for this acknowledgement, and for Ms. Heffron for her outstanding leadership and the capacity that she's built in every single one of her faculty and staff. So as we think about this award and you think about academic excellence, I want you to think about all of the individuals at Marian who make that possible. Who some of them are here tonight, but all of them could not be here, who are represented, who bring our students to school, who make them feel comfortable. When they're not, they have someone to go to. The teachers who are in the classroom every single day, before school, after school, on the weekends, supporting as much as they can. So I'd like to call Ann Heffron up here for a few minutes so she say a few words. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Didn't last 10 seconds. The hugging was 1 second.
Thank you, Dr. Marse.
1 second rule.
So I have 5 seconds left, right? So I would like to thank the board for having us here this evening. I have to tell everybody that you might have heard a few chuckles back there when Dr. Marse was referring to the application process. And when we started with the application process, once we got the nomination that we were nominated to be a possible Blue Ribbon school, we spent many long evenings ordering takeout from 6 to 10 o'clock for days on end before conferences. And I have a few of the folks that helped me with that. And I'd like to recognize the staff members that are here. So if they could please stand. Staff members that are here, could you please stand up so people can see? Let's give them a round of applause. And I also have a group of our HSA parents that came this evening to support all the things that we do in school. And I think that one of the wonderful things about all of our schools in Lower Merion is the wonderful parent-community school relationship that we enjoy. We couldn't do our work without the support of our HSA, so I'd like to acknowledge our HSA leadership. Can you guys stand up? So again, it was indeed an honor and a privilege to be part of this whole process, and having an opportunity to be in Washington, D.C. with 290 some schools plus additional high schools that were also nominated. It was pretty awe-inspiring to be in a room with people from South Dakota and Hawaii and Alaska and California talking about what's going on in schools today, and just listening to people talk about how passionate they are about what they do, and really everybody focusing on the kids, because I think from day to day we can get mired down in the kind of the minutia, and we really kind of think back about what we're really here to do, and we think about our kids in all of our schools. I think that's why we're here. And so from going to DC and going to Hershey with Dr. Marse when we were just with the Pennsylvania schools, it was really just nice to be in that company, and made me very proud to be part of the Lower Merion School District. And so I just really want to thank the board for their tremendous support, and for the staff and the parents. But we couldn't do our jobs also without our kids. Our kids in all of our schools are amazing, and I'm a little biased because I love our Marion kids, but it's a great school community to be part of, and I'm really, really proud, of this honor, and proud of the people with whom I work. So thank you for acknowledging us tonight. Thank you very much.
Just quickly before you continue, Dr. Marse, on behalf of the board, Ms. Heffron and your staff and the HSA, the board wants to thank you for the hard work and congratulate you on this great honor.
I also have the pleasure tonight of recognizing another group of individuals for their outstanding commitment to public education. January is School Director Recognition Month in Pennsylvania. Time to spotlight the contribution of those valuable citizen volunteers like yourselves. In Lower Merion, our school directors are passionate about making our schools the very best, and their commitment to quality public education is unsurpassed. They devote countless hours each month to school business. They take the time to understand the issues, opportunities, and challenges that we face as a district, and truly are experts in their role. I want to go off script a little bit and say that in the 7 months that I've had the opportunity to be acting superintendent, it is true to form with regards to, and I'm not saying this because I want the position. Just wanna- I am being very sincere because when you talk about the amount of time, I calculate the amount of time I invest, and then right next to me are the board members, and throughout all that conversation. So it's the weekdays, it's after the board meeting, it's the weekends, and everything in between. So there's tremendous level of commitment, and I wanted to say that personally. This year's theme for School Director Recognition Month is celebrating our everyday heroes. As champions of the most important, most essential investment in our nation's future, public education, our school directors truly are heroes. They provide the necessary leadership to ensure that our students receive an exceptional education, one that serves as a model for Pennsylvania and the country. On behalf of the Lower Merion School District community, I would like to recognize each of you board directors tonight and present you with a token of our appreciation. We are grateful for all that you do and for putting students first. We do not have beautiful glass framed like Marion received, but you do have a certificate of appreciation in front of you at your desk saying thank you for your work that you do tirelessly on behalf of students. So thank you again for the work that you do.
Dr. Gilbert reminded me that those of you who are have maybe already seen the math sequence proposal change or are getting prepared for tomorrow's day of work are welcome to leave at this time before we continue the rest of the meeting. We certainly welcome you to stay, but we won't blame you if you need to go.
At this time, I'd like to move to the business portion of the business of tonight's meeting. The superintendent recommends that the Board of School Directors approves the attached human resource action as listed in Exhibit HR-1, new hire administrative per the attached exhibit.
Are there any questions on the proposed exhibit? I'm forgetting oh, is there a motion to approve? It's been a few weeks. Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Welcome.
Congratulations. Mr. Vinson, who is our new supervisor of transportation, we want to thank you and welcome you to the district, and we're really excited to have you on board. So thank you for coming tonight. Thank you. Please.
I just wanted to say thank you and for trust you placing in me, selecting me for this position. I promise to work very hard to prove you right, and want to thank interview team. Process was very thorough and challenging, and I'm glad I made it through. So a nice meeting you all tonight, and looking forward to working with you all. Thank you very much.
now turn the meeting back over to Dr. Marseille as we move forward with the presentation on the math sequence proposal change.
Thank you. Really quickly, and I'll introduce Mrs. Marcy Hockfield, who's been instrumental in helping lead this conversation, and she'll introduce Arthur Mitchell as well. It's almost to the day last year, January 15th, when I met with 24 math administrators from 6 through 12. And we met in this room. It was scheduled for an hour from 3 to 4. It was 6:45, and we were still in the meeting. Part of that was a conversation that teachers wanted to think differently about the math sequence. There were things that they were seeing inside their classroom that said, we need to rethink. There were things that were happening with regards to state mandates that were shifting the way in which we think about mathematics. Information that we didn't have when we talked about our earlier sequence that we adopted. And in that time, we've had numerous conversations that spanned from algebra readiness, that talked about content, that talked about keystone testing, the impact of that on the math sequence, the amount of algebra that needs to be covered, assessments and how to appropriately make sure that students are assessed appropriately, supports around enrichment and remediation. And the list just went on in terms of the recommendations that they wanted to spend some time talking about. So with that, Ms. Hockfield came and began to, as we were transitioning in leadership, has been instrumental in forging that path, in helping bring together now not just 6 through 12 math teachers, K through 12 math teachers. I said earlier before that what you do in the middle school has a direct impact of what happens in the elementary, and vice versa. So with that, I'd like to ask Ms. Hockfield to speak briefly about the path we took, and then pass it on to, I believe, Arthur, who's going to engage in further dialogue.
Good evening. So this year, Dr. Marseille, as everyone knows, opened up the school year by welcoming back our teachers and staff with a happy dance. And the theme of collaboration, innovation, and celebration. I know that you're all probably scratching your heads and saying, what in the world does the math sequence have to do with that theme? But I want to assure you that it has a lot to do with it. Since I started this July, we have been collaborating. We've been collaborating with elementary teachers, with middle school teachers, with secondary teachers, with building principals, building assistant principals, the entire elementary team. We have been collaborating with anyone who will listen and anyone who will work with us on this math sequence. So it has been a true collaboration. It's been innovative in the fact that we've looked at every angle of this math sequence. And we've looked at traditional measures like testing, and we've said, no, that's not enough. What else? What is the research telling us? What's the best thing for kids? It's been celebratory in the fact that we've spent the last 2 months working with the curriculum committee of the board and parents who've attended those meetings and have had us thinking differently. And when we go back and we revise and we answer questions and we do further research, that's been celebratory for us. It's been different. It's been a process unlike any other process than I've been a part of. Tonight, I first of all want to thank, there are people here who have been so instrumental in this process. Peter Kazmar, one of our teachers extraordinaire at Lower Merion High School. Georgine Hyback, our content lead and phenomenal teacher at Bala Cynwyd Middle School. Nancy at Connemasa, who as the elementary STEM person, as Dr. Marseille said, has been crucial in this process. If we don't know what's happening in the elementary school, and if we're not looking K through when we look at any curricular sequence, then we're missing something. And really importantly, Arthur Mitchell. I didn't know Arthur, I mean, I've worked with Arthur for years, but I didn't know him well. I know Arthur well. In fact, at one of our meetings, I said that Nancy and Arthur and I, from one of my favorite movies, The Hangover, are like the three best friends that anyone's ever had. As an English teacher and assistant principal, I've spent a lot of time learning about math, and the two of them know a lot about math. Arthur has put in a tremendous number of hours. I can't even tell you, and I won't even go into the fact that his computer crashed this weekend. But a tremendous number of hours doing the research, doing the work, having our strategic plan in mind. This is about thinking differently about our sequence, about the process that we go through as kids move through our program. So with that, I want to introduce Arthur Mitchell, and if we'll be happy to entertain questions after his presentation. And it's not quite as many slides as Dr. Marseille always has, but it's getting up there. So sit tight.
Collaboration, celebration, innovation. That's a those are. It's a really big call to fulfill. There we go. I think I have it now. Bingo. Technology works. As Marcy said, my computer crashed, so technology doesn't always work for me. It was one of the scariest moments that I've had in a while. But thankfully, I had some things backed up, and we were able to cobble together some other pieces that may be lost forever in cyberspace.
Arthur, we have a superhero by the name of George Fraser.
I called some of George's minions, and they got to me and helped me out. That's right. No, they're servicing me well, and trying to get me back up and running. Yeah, this has been a process. This has been and hopefully tonight will be the culmination of this portion of the process, and we'll be transitioning into some of the real work that has to be done. And as Marcy was just describing, this was not a one-man show. This was not an effort that I carried on my shoulders alone, that this was a group effort. This truly was a collaborative effort. We have been listening and to teachers for a couple of years now. Right from the very beginning of this process, we've been getting feedback, and we've been getting some very strong feedback. That professionals who we've hired, who we entrust to our children, who care very deeply, not just about the mathematics, but about the children who are in front of them, have expressed concerns, and we've heard those concerns. There have been concerns even about the process, and that the process wasn't moving fast enough or far enough. But we think that we've done a good job in making sure that we have something that is reasonable, something that helps us to move forward, something that actually takes into account not just the spirit, but the actual words in that new strategic plan. And we have dissected that strategic plan and ensured that we are following what's there as we're trying to embody that type of change. That strategic plan is a wonderful. I've been in multiple districts, multiple organizations, and I've had lots of great paper product strategic plans. This is really the first one that I've been able to say is something that's actionable for me, because it allows some broad latitude in the way that I view what I'm doing and the way that I view my job. I was actually using the strategic plan yesterday as I was working with some young people around how to think about setting goals for their lives, and how a document like that, how they can start to think broadly and think about what real innovation means. Some people would say there's only but so much innovation you can do in math. That's not necessarily true. There's lots of things we can do because we have wonderful, innovative people who are in front of our children teaching the mathematics. So although we have state standards, although we have national standards, those are only guidelines for us to follow. What we actually do within the classrooms and the things that we're putting in place, that we have put in place and we're currently working on strengthening, will be the things that make the biggest change. So although we're looking at a sequence right now, the sequence and some of the ancillary pieces that go with the sequencing, this is just a formality, because the real work, no matter what the sequence is, no matter what the curriculum is, comes through supporting the teachers who are instructing our children. So with that soapbox moment being finished, let me get into the heart of the proposal, once again, this is very familiar to some of you. We've taken some pieces, put them together, just making this a little bit more coherent and trying to ensure that we've answered the questions. So in 2011, excuse me, it's 4 years ago, the Board of School Directors had approved a change, and that change was moving to that full eighth grade Algebra 1 one-year program for all students. That was based on my predecessor, who did some really good research around that, and a charge that she had around ensuring that we were looking at equity and access. And those equity and access issues are huge, because one of the things about mathematics is different than every other curriculum area, in that this is the only one where we start to make these acceleration issues that tie into other areas of the curriculum that really do have an impact on students' trajectories. So the right thing, doing the right thing for the right reasons was the mission of that change that took place. When we take a look at where we were previously, prior to 2011, we had these 3 entry points for sixth grade mathematics. This was based on how students finished up at the elementary level, and students would progress through this process. When we take a look at that Intro to Algebra and Algebra 1 course, those might have looked slightly different depending on where you entered, but at the end of the day, students were getting through the algebra program in 2 years and then entering the high school sequence. One of the things we're going to see is that the changes actually take place at the middle school level. The high school, we've added some additional coursework. We're looking at how we're instructing at the high school level, but students have always had the opportunity to enter into either a college prep or an honors course at the high school level, as long as the prerequisites are met. And that will still be the same thing, that as long as we have students who have met the prerequisites, who are prepared for the rigors of an honors course, they'll be able to move into those pathways. And there's some fluidity around how students can move into an honors versus a college prep experience. One thing that will not change is that if it is a college prep or an honors course, it's preparing our students for what comes after they leave Lower Merion. That we still have a very high graduation rate with very high college placement, and that would dictate, that demonstrates that the math program, whether the students are in an honors or a college prep course, is actually working to prepare those students for what comes after Lower Merion. We had a one-year transition. This was planned for, but in this one-year transition, you see we reduced the number of sixth grade entry courses from 3 to 2. So we just have a pre-algebra and a math 6 entry, and then from there, moving into 7th and 8th grade, the courses branched off. And so you had some students who were finishing up geometry by 8th grade, some by 9th grade, and still some by 10th grade. And one thing you'll see is some of that really doesn't change as we take a look at what the proposal is going to look like. But that moves us into where we are currently. So currently we have a program, we have acceleration that still occurs at the elementary level, where students can either accelerate after 4th grade, skipping 5th grade math, or accelerate after 5th grade, skipping 6th grade math. The 5th grade skip isn't really skipping 5th grade math, and I'll describe that a little bit more later on, because since we have identified those students, a lot of that instruction or that 5th grade material is subsumed into that course that they would be skipping. When students are skipping 6th grade math, they actually are really skipping that course because of the fact that they're entering into pre-algebra in the 6th grade. Right now, all students are either entering Algebra 1 in 7th or 8th grade, and it's a one-year course. The Keystone exam is going to be given at the end of that course. And then, as I stated earlier, when students move into high school, they have the ability to either take college prep or honors level math courses. This is our current sequence, just in a visual representation that tells you exactly what I just said. The color coding there, just trying to match up what on grade level looks like versus being accelerated by a year. When we take a look at this, when we're measuring up and lining up the pre-algebra experiences, the Algebra 1 experiences, those are the same courses, the same content that's being covered in those courses regardless of the entry point, and the entry year point. Once we get to the high school level, we know that, as we said, those students are either going to be moving into that, into honors or college prep courses. And then once students have finished their 11th grade year, anything beyond 11th grade is really seen as a math elective, because only 3 years of mathematics are required for graduation. So, if we made this change, why is there a need to make an additional change? As I said, right from the very beginning, I've been receiving feedback from teachers, from parents, from students themselves around what some of the limitations were in the program that we had presented. So that feedback is really important in helping us to think about what we're doing. We always have to hold the mirror up to ourselves and take a look to see what our reflection actually looks like at that point, and use lots of different data points in order to say, well, hey, we need to make some adjustments. One thing about curriculum, as when I was trained in curriculum in my teacher preparation program years ago, it was always seen as a static document that you revisited once every 6 to 7 years, that you had these curriculum cycles. It's not like that anymore. Now we're using data and we're making adjustments on the fly, because from one year to the next we can say that this isn't working, we need to emphasize this over that. Our data may show that something that we believe we're doing well, we're not actually doing well at all, and so we make those adjustments as needed. And as we're making the adjustments, we're working from a basis, from standards and from a written document, but when it becomes operationalized, we're actually taking a look at how we're meeting students' needs based on what the educators who are in front of them are telling us their experiences look like. So teacher feedback there was a lot of feedback, a lot of very strong emotional feedback around some of these issues. Some things were out of our control. When we took a look at the new state standards, these would be the PA core standards and the Keystones together, the combination of those two documents. We just had more material that was being covered in algebra. There was just no way around it. That increase in material left less time for developing the type of mathematical thinking that we would like to develop in students, so that although for the most part the students were getting what they needed, there were some students who definitely were not getting the full complement of what was necessary for them to develop a type of mathematical thinking that would help them or serve them long term. When we think about all those additional topics, there also then, if we're doing algebra in the 8th grade, we still have the PSSA to be concerned about, and some of the PSSA standards, which if we're doing algebra in 8th grade, we're not getting to all those standards because we have an algebra course and not an 8th grade course. So there are some topics that students just didn't have enough exposure to that would help them with their long-term success. And the pace of a one-year course. The pace is a pretty brutal pace. One reason is because of the placement of the Keystone exam. We can't escape the reality of the Keystone. The Keystone exam shortens the school year for us because the exam is given in May. So we've increased the amount of material and reduced the amount of instructional time. So that does reduce the opportunity for the types of collaboration, scaffolded instruction projects, reteaching that the teachers would like to do more often and that they had done in the past, that they wanted to get back to for a larger portion of students. And the last thing, and Dr. Brandsma talked about this briefly, not all students are developmentally ready at the same time. As students develop and mature at different rates, Dr. Marseille always likes to use sports analogies, talking about racing and that everyone can't run the same race. And that, when we're looking at mathematics, when we're just looking at education in general, students do develop at different rates. It's not that they can't acquire, won't acquire the information, but not everyone is getting out of the starting block at the same with the same type of explosion, and not everyone is keeping the same pace. But we can all get to the end line that we're trying to get to. So because of that developmental readiness, and we're making a lot of these decisions very early for students, and we're putting everyone into a single package, that single package did not work for all students, or is not working for all students, so we needed to re-examine. We also had some very valuable information coming out from the math community. The National Council for the Teachers of Mathematics, they put out 2 position statements. One really just said that algebra should be taken when students are ready for algebra, that we don't have to set a hard timeline, that we don't have to get to every student to algebra by 8th grade, because if we're thinking about algebraic thinking, not everyone is going to be there by the end of 8th grade. And then the other piece that came out of NCTM was really in response to the Common Core, and it reemphasized the notion that algebra is a really strong, a really important strand of mathematics, and that it needs to be presented all along the way, and then you can culminate in an algebra course, but then you're going to continue algebraic thinking in that algebra strand beyond that algebra course. And so we need to ensure that that algebraic thinking that is built into the math program in a coherent way. Parent feedback, some of which we've heard today. So concerned that students are unnecessarily being rushed through. And this would be our advanced students, but for the most part, when we take a look at students who may have had a traditional struggle in mathematics, then we were pushing them through at the same rate, whether they were prepared to move forward or not. And so there have been parents who said that my child passed algebra, they may have even passed the PSSA and the Keystone, but upon examination, they haven't had sufficient time to develop the type of thinking that we want them to develop. And so they've expressed that concern to mathematics teachers and to administrators alike. And then when we take a look at what wasn't in place when this decision was made, the PA core standards were not completed or adopted at that point, which is extremely important because there was this missing content information around what the state was looking at and was requiring. Updates in Chapter 4 around graduation requirements and how that was going to play out. We didn't have a complete picture of that. And we didn't have an operational Keystone exam. We still, even though we have operational Keystone exams, we still don't have enough information coming back from Keystone exams to make a lot of informed decisions. But at least we have an operational exam, we're getting some data back. But without the operational exam, we didn't really have a good hard target to work from and a good model which we are looking at from the state. When we take a look at our achievement data, so over the past 3 years, this is our PSSA data at the middle school level. So we see that we have very stable, fairly high achievement across the board. And this is 6th, 7th, and 8th grade, aggregated data. When we take a look at this and then we compare it to our Keystone data, we see that there's a significant difference there. Our 7th grade students who are in Algebra 1 have a success rate, an unparalleled almost success rate on the Keystone exam. However, our 8th grade students are not experiencing the same level of success. And so this coupled with, or this actually reinforced the teacher's position that, what we're doing right now, we need to take another look at. And so these data just reinforced what they have been telling us. And so we decided we needed to open this up and make some changes. So our process, Dr. Marseille referred to that wonderful meeting, and that meeting was not just the beginning of the process. We've had lots of meetings before then, had lots of feedback, but that was really the push that got us started in really working on how to make some of these changes. So we met with groups of teachers, we made some recommendations, we continued to gather relevant information, and after gathering that information, going along, getting all the student achievement data after 2 years of having data, we continue to enter into the process of revising the middle school math curriculum so that it reflected the PA core, so at least we had a document that let us see what the scope and sequence was of everything we needed to be able to do. In the fall, we convened several meetings where we got groups of teachers and administrators together in order to develop a proposal for refining the math sequence. We took that proposal, it went around to the buildings, went to the administration, and from the original proposal, we made some changes in that original proposal. As it says there, they were consistent with current research and the newly adopted strategic plan. And anytime you're doing something by committee, we know that we're never going to please everyone in the committee, and there's going to be some dissent, but we got to a spot where here's what the committee said they would like to do, and we made adjustments to that plan in order to match what we thought was best from an administrative standpoint. And that's what we've been presenting to the board over the past 2 meetings. The recommended changes, there are really 2 changes here, and one is support for a change. The 2 changes, one is that we reinstitute a 2-year algebra course, so that right now where we only have a 1-year algebra course in either 7th or 8th grade, we're looking at trying to put back in a 2-year algebra course between 8th and 9th grades, so an algebra part 1 and algebra part 2 for some students between 8th and 9th grades. The next thing says incorporation of bridge programs to support acceleration, that we still have students who will want to accelerate through the program. We'll talk about what that acceleration looks like. It's not how we generally view acceleration right now, so I'll describe that a little bit more later on. And then the other big thing here is that we're proposing that we move the Keystone to being given during or after Algebra 2. This is something we've had conversations with the state around this. We've had permissions given by the state to make this adjustment. This would be an all or none type of adjustment. We can't split the exam between giving it in Algebra 1 or Algebra 2. So this is, when we're considering this, this is a huge shift. Visually, what does this look like? So previously, where we had just those two pathways, the top pathway was starting at pre-algebra, going up through the math elective with calculus in the 11th grade, and that second pathway, which is where we currently are, starting in math 6 and moving up to the math elective in 12th grade, which could be anywhere from financial math over through the AP computer science, and we'll take a look at what that looks like. So the additional piece that we're adding is that the Algebra 1 course, instead of all students moving into Algebra 1 in 8th grade, that some students would move into a 2-year program based on certain criteria, and we'll talk about what those criteria are. But one of the things that we needed to do is kind of tease out what this looks like pathway by pathway. And instead of just putting up the same type of visual, I wanted to tell some stories. Now, these aren't students, these aren't Lmsd students, these could be some Lower Merion students. And so I'm going to talk about what could be. So I'm going to introduce you to Brianna. So this is Brianna. So Brianna is a student who was placed into accelerated math and at the beginning of 5th grade. And so when she entered middle school, she entered in pre-algebra. And like the majority of her cohort, she did well and progressed through Algebra 1 in 7th grade and geometry in 8th grade. She participated in lots of clubs and other activities. One of the things she did was TSA, and TSA, the Technology Student Association, sparked something in Brianna. So when she got into 9th grade, not only did she enroll in the Algebra 2 honors, but she also decided to take a chance and go into the new visual programming course. And that visual programming course is an introductory computer science course, and it resonated with her. So Brianna decides to pursue not just math analysis as her core course in 10th grade, but to go into the Computer Science 1 and Computer Science 2 courses as well, 2 single semester courses. During her 11th grade year, continue on the mathematics track, she goes into BC Calculus, and like a lot of other students who want to take statistics, she doubles up and takes an AP statistics course as well, because in her senior year, she wants to get into this new linear algebra and discrete math course that we have that's offered. But she also wants to end up her career taking another computer science course, and so she takes the AP computer science course. All this leads up to Brianna fulfilling her dreams and moving on to Stanford University in biocomputation, because she's just that bright. So now we want to meet another student. This is Paul. Okay? So, in Paul's career, like Brianna, he started off in accelerated math, so he just zoomed right through pre-algebra and Algebra 1, hit a little bumpy road in geometry, but he was still very successful, and that allowed Paul to move on to the high school in taking additional honors courses. But Paul also had developed a love of art because we have such a fantastic arts program. So Paul was, kind of ambivalent about what he was going to be able to do. He knew he was going to continue to take math, so he went on to Algebra 2 honors and the math analysis honors course, which is that same pathway that a lot of students who are accelerated go on. But when Paul got to his junior year, he had already made a decision about the types of schools he wanted to go to, what he wanted to pursue. He wanted to be an art major. He wanted to get into a good art school, so he knew that he wanted to at least take a good math class, so he continued on to the AB calculus course. And then his senior year, he took AP statistics because he wanted to continue to take high-level rigorous courses, because he knew not only would make him the most competitive, but allowed him to be a good mathematics thinker. So all that math allowed Paul to pursue his dreams and move on to the School of the Art Institute of Chicago, one of the top art institutes in the country. And now we meet Vincent. when we take a look at Vincent's trajectory, he was always a solid math student, but his assessment scores didn't allow him to move into an accelerated program. So since he was never eligible for acceleration, he just did well where he was. In 7th grade, he was in pre-algebra. He was doing okay in pre-algebra, but he just wasn't as focused as he needed to be. His teacher saw some potential in him and said, well, Vincent, at this point, you would not be recommended to go into a one-year algebra program. We suggest that you enter into a bridge program in order to develop some mathematical thinking and to make you a better math student. So he enters into a bridge program in 7th grade that makes him eligible to move into that one-year algebra program in 8th grade. In 9th grade, it's on for Vincent. At that point, he moves into an honors geometry course, continues on to the Algebra 2 honors, the math analysis and trigonometry honors, and the AB calculus, and he doubles up in statistics because being the scientific mind that he is, he knows that he needs that strong statistics background. And then Vincent goes and enrolls in the dual degree engineering program between Morehouse and Georgia Tech as a chemical engineer. And now we meet Amanda. So Amanda was never a very confident math student. It's not that she didn't have math ability, she just had some math anxieties. So in math class, she was generally quiet, depended upon the group in order to answer for her. And so she just never had the type of experience that she could have or should have had. And so she was a little bit of an underperformer. She was encouraged greatly by her teachers. After pre-algebra, she moved into the 2-year algebra program in which she started to blossom, and she became more confident. So after her 2 years of algebra, she knew that she was going to continue in math, but she didn't want to enter into the honors program or try the honors courses. She wanted to get it. She knew that a lot of her peers and some students who she knew who had gone through the college prep courses, and that they did fine. They were exactly where they needed to be. But at the same time, she was also heavily invested, and she became part of the business club. And by her senior year, she knew that we had offered a brand new course in financial math. So she doubled up, went through math analysis in the financial math course, and she went into the Westchester University business program. So here we have, these stories aren't brand new stories. This is not something brand new around the sequence. What it shows, though, is that there is no one pathway that students are going to take, and there are lots of different stories that we're going to be able to enter into and tell around our students in mathematics. And the more offerings that we have, the more opportunities that we provide, and when we continue to strengthen our math program, we're going to always see these success stories like Vincent and Amanda and Brianna and Paul. So when we think about the difference between a 1-year and a 2-year program, algebra is algebra. At the end of the day, if a student enters into a 1-year program or a 2-year program, they're going to get the same content. One reason is because they have the same measure at the end, and we need to ensure that they have what's adequate for that measure at the end. But another reason is, because when we take a look at a 1-year or 2-year, the reason we're giving 2 years is just so that content can be taught at a different pace. Same content, different pace of coverage. The same instructional materials are going to be used. We're looking at and exploring new instructional materials so that we ensure that across both middle school buildings we're looking at the same text at the same time. The benchmark exams and common exams will cover the same topics, and this is ensured because our teachers are working so well together collaboratively. What is allowed, or what does come out of this program, is when we slow the pace down for that group of students, especially in 8th grade, we have those additional topics that are part of the PA core that generally are not covered at a much depth in the 8th grade because that is an algebra course and not an 8th grade math course. And the additional coverage of those topics will help to ensure that those students have a much richer math experience. And that difference in pace will create more opportunities for collaboration, scaffolded instruction, projects, reteaching, all those things which are important for long-term success in math. In order for a student, so when we go back to that, making a decision between 1 year or 2 years of algebra, we do have to have some criteria in order to move the students. So we have 3 different types of criteria we're going to be using. Grades based on assessment scores, end of year algebra readiness exam, and teacher recommendations, which are all very important measures. Now, one would ask, why are we saying not just grades, but grades based on assessment scores? One thing about grading is that grades do vary from classroom to classroom based on the types of experiences and the different projects and other things the teachers may give. But the teachers are working collaboratively, and so tests and quizzes tend to be a much better reflection of what's happening across multiple classrooms because of the collaborative nature of the assessment development. An end-of-year algebra readiness exam. This is not something that's new. We've used instruments like this in the past, and the purpose of an end-of-year algebra readiness exam is one, it's an agnostic tool, meaning that it is not necessarily tied directly to something that a teacher produced or that a teacher has a passion for, that a teacher loves. It gives us an objective measure, and if we're looking at something, we need to make sure that it's aligning to the PA core, because we want to ensure that our students are actually getting what the state is requiring that we believe is a good foundation. A range of item difficulty. There's often a desire to ensure that students do well on an exam. And so when we take a look and we're purchasing an exam or purchasing a tool, we want something that actually does show us how well students do with level 1 items versus level 2 items. For parents who have been through the PSAT or SAT process, we know that one of the most important reports you get at the end is how the students did on what the SAT or College Board may call easy, moderate, or difficult questions, because it helps you to focus in on the types of questions that the students should be able to answer. And then it produces a reference score. So it's not just telling us what the students knew or didn't know, but it also tells us how the students stack up within their building, within their class, within their building, and hopefully a national reference score as well, so we can see where they measure against other students who they will be measured against at a later date. An important thing about this is that anytime we're doing any type of assessment, we would ensure that all accommodations that would be necessary would be received by the students. The teacher recommendation piece, the math practices are it's just a fancy way of saying the math skills. There are 8 practices that we're looking at this point, and it's these 8 practices that we'd want teachers to take a look at how the students are developing. Here's just an example. This is the tool the instrument that we're that we're looking at most closely, and what it does, it says, it's a simple statement around what students can do, in this case construct viable arguments. And so our students, initial or intermediate or advanced in their ability to construct viable arguments. Now, this would not be just a one-time measure. Teachers would spend some time evaluating the students over a long period of time so that they could give a full and accurate description of how well the students can meet these 8 different mathematical practices. So when we think about the impacts of the proposed changes, one of the things that we've done and we want to ensure that we're doing is that we'll have pathways that students can follow that are suited to who they are. That's a really important piece that came out of the strategic plan that we want to emphasize, that these are people and not widgets. There is not a one-size-fits-all model. There shouldn't be a pathway that students feel that they have to be on and can't deviate from that path, because that is the only path that leads to success. There are, every year we graduate 600 different types of success stories, and we want to be able to emphasize how those 600 stories have progressed through our programs. More time for instruction. That's a really important piece. So whether we're providing a 1 or 2 year program, and then the whole testing piece, or whether we're moving the test, we want to provide more time for instruction, especially for those students who have demonstrated the need for that additional instruction. And then if that Keystone exam is moved, it will be placed to where it's supposed to be, which is a high school exam and not a middle school exam. And so moving it would also mean less testing at the middle school level. One of the things that has occurred for our 8th graders in the past is that up until this year, they were taking 5 exams starting in April and moving on through May, so that their school year was effectively ending in early April. As they, schools shut down for state requirements. Even if we can reduce that number by 1, we'd be doing the students a great service. Now, there are some important questions, because one of the things about that proposal, the initial proposal and where we are right now, it wasn't just 8th grade algebra. That was also tied to the opportunity and ability for students to get the calculus. Now, if we go back to those NCTM position papers, they talk about algebra. Rarely will you get the mathematics community to talk about calculus for all, or the need for calculus for every student. Now, we do know that calculus is an important course, and that students at some point in their careers, if they get into college or when they're going to college, many students will get the calculus there. Often, depending what your major is, you may take the calculus in high school and then take it again in college, depending on the level of school or depending on the type of school that students are applying to. But if we're still looking at calculus as an important measure, an important thing for students to be able to get to, and we have students who are in a 2-year program, is it still possible for them to get to a calculus program? It is, and it may require a little more on the student's part that would demonstrate that they are ready to put in the work and the families are ready to make the commitment in order to get to that calculus, to that place. So we have 3 different ways, 2 of which have always been on the table, and the third is something that we're proposing now. So one is participation in a bridge program. And a bridge program would allow students to do some additional work during the school year and possibly some summer work in order to get prepared for that next school year. The second thing would be taking geometry in the summer school after 9th grade. The third, taking geometry concurrent with Algebra 2 in the 10th grade. Of those 3, my least favorite is summer school geometry after 9th grade, just because anytime we are taking a course and reducing it down to 6 weeks and then saying we're going to spend multiple hours a day in that course, students are not going to get the fullness and richness of what happens over a full year of instruction. But it is an option that many students have explored and that we would still want to offer because there are students who have done that and have been successful. So the bridge program, a bridge, we're making a connection. So in this case, this bridge is a connection to skills, long-term skills which are necessary for long-term success in math. This is not just more math. This is not just more content. It's not just I'm going to give you more problems to do in algebra and pre-algebra. We're trying to build skills which are consistent with Common Core standards of mathematical practice. So we would be using, of course, pre-algebra or algebra content as the vehicle, but the types of things that students would be engaged in would help them to do what you see there, extend their thinking and perseverant problem solving, reasoning, communicating effectively in math. That communicating effectively in mathematics is key. We know that at our high school level we have courses which were designed with that in mind, even before there was a PA core, even before there were a series of mathematical practices. The need to effectively communicate in mathematics is, often we'll separate, separate those who can persist in mathematics long term versus those who continue to struggle. Constructing viable arguments, critiquing the reasoning of others, so that mathematics is a community activity, that you have to be able to work within a community of your peers and problem solve together. And then making sense of structure and patterns of mathematics so that you actually can see the math that you are working on. It was probably one of my biggest struggles in geometry. I just couldn't see it. Geometry was a 3D subject and I was a 2D type of person at that point. So had I had a teacher at that point all those years ago, too many years ago to describe, who helped me to make sense of the structure and patterns of mathematics, geometry probably would have been a better friend of mine than it was. So there are 2 bridge programs that we want to consider. One is pre-algebra to algebra 1, so that we're looking at students who are trying to enter into the 1-year algebra 1 course in 8th grade. So at some point, for their second semester in pre-algebra, those students would be identified early and would be enabled to enroll in a bridge program. So that bridge program would have a school day component that would replace a special, and we would propose also that there would be a summer component that would go along with it, like a summer extended experience to help the students, almost, I would dare say a boot camp, but a good math summer camp for the students that would really work on those mathematical skills. And then the other would be an algebra part 1, to a summer algebra 1 part 2 bridge. So there would be students who would start off in that algebra 1 part 1 course in 8th grade, but then would want the ability to finish up algebra 1 over over the summer so that they can enter geometry in 9th grade. So like the other students, there would be a requirement for them to participate in a bridge during the school year, that second semester, to become eligible to go to summer school in order for them to get to that geometry in 9th grade. When we take a look at the funding for the bridge, the school day component, it's a matter of scheduling and taking a look at how we're scheduling the teacher's time and the specials. But the summer piece is the one where we're taking a look at how funding would have to be structured. Currently, we have the Smart Algebra Preview program that's run over the past 2 years. And prior to that, we've had the Smart Algebra program, or a SMART program. The structure of the SMART program over the past years has been for algebra support for students going into algebra. If we're moving into a 2-year algebra program, we negate the need for that same SMART program constituted the way it currently is, and we'd be able to move those funds to the bridge program. And we're also exploring partnerships. We've had some meetings with St. Joseph's University because they would like to help us develop this and make this part of their model as well. They have a high school model right now. We have some meetings planned with them to work on a middle school model, and so that would support our bridge idea. As I said earlier, we also have new instructional materials that need to be selected, and so this is already in the budget. The teachers have already started working on this process. We've piloted some of these materials. We've reduced it down to a few choices. So we've had a cross-building committee to work on this process, and we're going to have some vendor presentations in January. So we'll scrutinize those choices further, going through a more rigorous process in time for a presentation proposal of material selection for the board in March. When we look at the materials being considered, we have things that are traditional to things which are a little more non-traditional, but all are, for the most part, text-based with online supports. So from Pearson, Houghton Mifflin, and Prentice Hall, programs are being considered from all three. What isn't under consideration at this point is continuing with the CPM. CPM, although it is a well-respected, program, the CPM as it's currently constituted is not necessarily what we want to continue going along with. So the teachers and the committees have put forth these 3 programs for us to consider. When we look at the range for the cost, it's anywhere between $40 to $85 per student for the materials. And with all of them, as I said, there are text and online supports that will come along with them. For the most part, there's those 6-year subscriptions that come along with an initial purchase of the materials. Now, anytime we make a change, we need to make sure that we're engaging families and our community. So when this is approved and when we have the board's blessing, that's when we'll start our hitting the ground with communication to our children, their families, and the entire community. So letters being sent home from the district, FAQs being posted on the website, meetings with the Homeless Schools Association, school-based meetings that we would have, community-based meetings, working through our communication office in order to set all these things up. The teachers would definitely be able to communicate all these changes and the implications with the children, and the guidance department will also be thoroughly prepared to help students in course selection going forward. Our timelines, we're in the midst of those timelines right now. So number 1 there, you can help me cross that off the list, is the board presentation and then approval. Then beyond that, we're looking at refining the student placement criteria and working with our teachers in that, starting those presentations, getting our teachers involved in the evaluation process and the new instructional materials review. Professional development is key here. Our teachers have been working hard on these professional learning communities, and these professional learning communities are time for their collaboration. So we want to utilize that PLC time that our teachers have in order to get these things into their hands so that they can have these discussions on a regular basis to prepare themselves and have ongoing discussions around what things look like the student selection criteria, in order to ensure that we have a similar process in both buildings. And then over the summer, there's additional professional development that we'd have to have, new instructional materials trainings, and some assessment development in order for us to ensure that the assessments are aligned to what our needs are. So circling back, as I said, this process started before the strategic planning was well underway, but it was just great to see that as we were thinking, the strategic plan helped us to refine our thinking, and that this process actually goes along well with the strategic planning. So, as it says there, when we think about bold statement number 1, redefining success, is recognizes and honors that students grow at different rates, and that their ultimate outcomes should be evaluated based on the richness of appropriate, engaging, and challenging experience, not merely grades and assessments. That we want to ensure that we're giving students good experiences that will be reflected in good grades and assessments. However, the grades and assessments are not the be-all, end-all of their experiences. A transformative curriculum. Well, you know, as I said, we may struggle a little bit with this in mathematics, that thinking about transformative math, and it's really putting a curriculum in place that has an alignment that ensures that our students have a seamless education, and the type of flexibility that allows students to be at a place that helps to maximize their potential. And that commitment to professional learning, as with all that we do, it's the teachers who are the transformative agents, and it's their professional practice that's at the core of this proposal. So the PLCs that we're working with right now with our teachers, these are dynamic structures. When I say dynamic, dynamic meaning that it's the types of interactions that occur there, and the discussions and planning, and the forward thinking that when we put together a group of really bright, like-minded individuals who have the right, you know, who have the right goals in mind, that they can do some wonderful things, and we get to see that on a daily basis. And so the ideas and the of the PLC are really operationalized in when we give the teachers the latitude and the freedom to do what we have hired them to do. You know, case in point is that Lower Merion High School is a PLC model school at this point, or selected as a PLC model school because of the type of work that they've been doing. And so that's the type of infectious work that we like to see, not just throughout the mathematics program, but throughout the entire district. And so with that, I end my presentation and welcome your questions.
Thank you, Mr. Mitchell. We appreciate the presentation. I think this is the third iteration of it, so.
Third time's a charm.
Absolutely. We, again, I want to thank the curriculum team and Dr. Marseille for the group going back and answering all the committee as well as the board questions, even during the holiday break. So we appreciate the thoroughness and the comprehensive nature of the process, given that it is a change. So I'd like to entertain the board at this point in terms of questions and discussion points. So I'll just go around the table. I'll start with Dr. Golden.
I think I asked this question in an earlier presentation, but I just want to make sure that it's the same because there wasn't a slide on that. There's still no parental role in making this choice for the students who would take the 2-year Algebra 1, right? It's totally based on teacher recommendation and test scores, and parents and the student themselves have no,
Right. This
unlike honors or
correct.
or college prep, the students would have, and parents would have no say in that
At
process.
the middle level, correct. That this is based on the recommendation. However, if there were some concerns, that the parents can always go to the administration and voice those concerns and have that discussion at the building level.
I guess going back to collaborative, it might be more collaborative if parents were part of the conversation before the student was assigned to a math course.
We'll take that under advisement.
Marissa, did you have other? You good?
Oh,
Okay, okay. Diane?
Okay, great, thank you. First, just a quick comment. I love the movement of the Keystone exam to high school. It just, the fact that they're so rigid that you can't give it to the kids who are ready for it when they're ready for it is fine. You know, the fact that we can at least move it is a big plus. I noticed that math analysis trig is not listed as an elective. But for the kids who take 2 years of algebra, the algebra 1 in 2 years, that's the one that they're missing in the sequence. So is that not an elective option for them
We don't list it as
senior
an
year?
elective because they would take it within their 3-year sequence
No,
of
but
required
this would, these
courses.
are the kids who would be taking it senior year. It wasn't listed in their sequence.
Oh, correct.
It's listed, their senior year is listed as a math elective, but then that course is not listed as a possible elective.
I understand what you're saying. So because they have, yes, it would be considered an elective course for them because they've already completed their math requirement.
Right, so they could take that, or they could take statistics.
They
or
could take
something.
that, statistics, or anything else in that box.
So it seems
correct.
to me that.
We'll make that
somehow-
very
yeah,
clear.
somehow you need to alert them that they still can take that.
Yes.
And then, I thought I heard you say, but I, like, for clarity's sake, you talked about the bridge program and during this, taking it during the school year. There's a piece of that, taking it during the school year, and that they would take it in place of a special?
Yes.
Is that what you said?
That's the proposal at this point. We're still refining this within the buildings, but from what our thinking is that if a student is, and family is making this decision that they would like to commit to moving forward, then that would have to be part of what the commitment is. We make choices all the time in what we engage in, and in this case it would be a one semester choice that the student have to make in order to change their trajectory or change their opportunities for the type of math that they're going to move into later on.
Okay, so let me just throw out an idea then for that, because I have a concern about giving up a special for, a supplementary math course. And if a student were to do that, I would like to ask that they try and fill that special need somewhere else, so the need for that special somewhere else. So, for example, if the student has private violin lessons and works hard at home on the violin, then perhaps losing a music special might be reasonable. Or if the student does a lot of, goes to Saturdays at Mainline Arts Center, then maybe that it would be the art that they pass up. But it's for many of these students, by the time they get to high school, the thing that drives them, the thing that keeps them coming back to school, the thing that they love is that quote unquote special area. And sometimes they don't know it until they've gotten to high school, and I would hate for them to lose that exposure at the middle school level so that they can zoom up their math sequence. So if there's some way that we can try and keep that in mind and incorporate it so that they don't lose that richness of program.
You're right, because I used Paul as my second example, and Paul did develop a love of art there. So we are taking all those things into consideration as we're trying to put that together.
Dr. Gilbert?
Thank you very much for the presentation, and I'm trying again, because the change really is around these students who will be taking algebra in 2 years.
Correct.
I'm just focused on that, although I appreciate all the information. So I understand that you talked about this possibility, you called it summer boot camp, although you didn't want to use summer boot camp. So, and of course now I'm saying that. I'm gonna have to find
I
another.
I shouldn't have put it out there.
I
so now
know,
it's
I
gonna be
know.
what
Well,
it's
you put
known
it out
as.
there, and now I can't take it out of my
Math
head. So
boot
you have
camp
to come.
by Lower
So
Maryland.
I'm just trying to understand. I know you said that we were talking about issues around funding for this, but I'm first of all, I'm concerned. There's two issues that I'm concerned about, and I think this proposal is the process has been really thorough and inclusive, and I really appreciate that, and I think this is very innovative. So the questions I have are minor questions, and that which is if students are going to have the possibility of these bridge programs and accelerating, one question I have is making sure that parents are educated to those possibilities, so that it's not, there's different levels of, parent engagement, as we all know, and just even awareness of these issues, particularly depending on what your own skill set is. Mine's not math, so I know that would not be something I would be necessarily paying attention to. So I guess one issue would just be around communicating to parents what the possibilities are for these different bridge programs. And then the second issue is around the payment for them. And, you know, doing what we can to ensure that, I know that we ask students to pay for summer school, and I would like to know more about how we do that if there are financial issues, but I guess that's a big concern as well. So those are kind of two issues that I would just like to hear what your thoughts are about those issues.
And so at this point, as we were taking a look at this any summer opportunity, as I said, we currently have the SMART program in place, and as we make this transition, we wouldn't have the same need for the SMART program. So those resources that we continually set aside for SMART, we'd be able to utilize here. We've had discussions around payments as well, and whether or not there would be some payment that would go along with this program. And until we would know what the full need is and how many staff, personnel would be needed to run the program, at the beginning of next year, by mid-year, we'd have a much better picture of this. This wouldn't be in place until next year. This wouldn't be a program that we'd be running this summer. This is a program that we would be running the following summer. But as I said, we're not looking to invent something brand new to fund. We're taking something, we'd eliminate one program and move that funding over into the current program.
Okay, well, I appreciate that. I mean, my concern is less around, is just making sure that everybody has access. It's an access issue.
And at this point, the SMART program is not something that students pay for.
Okay, so I just, in moving forward, it sounds like you're already thinking about all these issues, just to please consider them, and thank you.
We're thinking about making sure that happens.
Okay. Ms. Oh, please.
And any student who receives free or reduced lunch payments, summer school fees are waived for those students. So the same would be in place for any of these programs.
Thank you for reminding us of that, Ms. Hockfield. Ms. Pollard?
And Mr. Mitchell, I too want to thank you and your team for just such tireless work. My concern is, and I still have the question, I know pushing the Keystone exam back to high school.
Yes.
The Keystone exams will be given during or after Algebra 2. Because of the weight of that exam in graduation, is that going to be more of a challenge? Because if I'm in high school, if I'm in the 11th grade, and I take the Keystone exam and I'm not doing well, where can I make up?
That's a very valid concern. So in taking a look at historical data, when the Keystone was initially given, it was given at the high school level as well. And one of the things that we saw was that our juniors who took the exam, because of the amount of math they had, they were, the success rate there was in the high 80s at that point. And so that really does have to do with just the amount of time students are spending in mathematics. So the challenges of an algebra exam are minimized at that point. But for students who we already have identified that may have additional struggles, that we do something flexible around their course sequence. Okay. And one slide, I didn't show the slide here, I think you have access to the slide, but one of the things that we do suggest is if we know that just based on data and recommendations that a student who's in the 2-year program may have a struggle on the Keystone exam and may just need some additional continuity, that we would recommend that an Algebra 2 course be placed after the Algebra 1 course so that they would be able to enter into that, keep that same strand of algebraic thinking going along, and then just switch the Algebra 2 and Geometry courses, which wouldn't really have an impact on their programming.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Ms. Robinson.
Thank you for the presentation. Most of my questions have been answered already, so I'm going to defer to Ben.
Thank you again. It was a lot of work, so thank you all for the time. My only concern, I guess, is more of a communication issue of there might be a knee-jerk reaction to sit there and say, if you're putting my child in a 2-year Algebra 1, we are pushing your child behind. And I don't think that is absolutely not the message I'm getting. I'm getting we're meeting your student where your student is as best we can. But want to be cautious of sending the message correctly. This isn't pushing your child back. This is putting your child where he or she is best, going to survive, or not survive, thrive is the word I'm looking for, excuse me.
Great word.
Sorry, I needed an I word in there. I just picked the wrong one. That would be my only concern, of just being mindful of how the importance of what we're doing is pushing all kids forward,
Yes.
not pushing kids backwards.
And we've had that conversation ad nauseum. So this is something that we are very sensitive to. That's why we have Doug on retainer at this point. This will be all Mr. Young all the time, and helping us craft messages that are unambiguous, that are very clear, and that help parents to make really good informed decisions.
Thank you for the presentation, and during the previous 2 meetings, I know you answered my first 82 questions, so I'm at 83 and 84 here.
Okay.
One question, sort of a quick question. Are there any bridge programs that don't have summer components?
At this point, we believe the summer is an important piece. As we're developing this, and especially with our work with St. Joe's, like I said, which is a really important partner because they've been entering into this work and they're bringing a wealth of information to us as well. Most of the models that we've seen, the summer is probably the more important piece. We want to make the school year piece a very strong centerpiece because it'll connect directly back to what the students are doing, but that summer would also give us that last concentrated effort just working on some of these skills. So it's not set in stone that the summer has to be a portion of it, but we believe that the summer is and should be an important piece of it.
I appreciate all the flexibility that you've built in that allows kids to move, between different levels and accelerate or slow down as they need to. But I have concerns about the summer component because that just doesn't work for other families, for every family. And my second question is that in 2011, we were trying to address issues of equity and access. Can you just talk for a minute about what those issues were and how we're addressing them?
Sure. The issues around equity and access historically were the fact that we have not just large and persistent achievement gaps, but we had outcome gaps that we're still facing at this point. And when I say facing, that the system that was in place is we're still seeing the vestiges of that as students have moved through the system who came through after that 2011 date. So it is ensuring that we didn't put up structural barriers to students moving forward. And at that point, the biggest structural barriers were that when a student entered into earlier on, it really was a track. When the student entered there was no real opportunity for effective movement to help a student to accelerate, and the opportunities, although they were officially there and presented themselves for a student at the high school level to move from a college prep class to an honors class if that was their choice, desire, and they had the skill set to do so. That happened less frequently than we wanted it to happen. Over the past few years, partially based on the change tied to the cultural proficiency work that we've been doing, and just really hard work and determination from the staff who really saw some of the injustices that were being perpetuated. Those stories have been changing. Not that they have all changed, and you see from the data slides that we still have lots of work to do. And so building stronger foundations is extremely important for us. So we can't divorce the structure from the instruction. And so strengthening what happens with the teachers and giving the teachers opportunities to collaborate. That's why the PLCs are so important, because having a group of teachers say, yeah, and we're saying implement this change, but do it on your own because we don't give you the type of collaboration time that's setting them up for failure. And so in putting the PLCs together along with providing these additional opportunities, we expect to continue to see growth in the students and in the instruction, and in how that instruction starts to look more and more similar from classroom to classroom. Not that the teachers are teaching the same, but that the outcomes start to look better across the board, and that as the teachers are collaborating, that level of collaboration helps the most veteran and the most novice teacher to become better at their craft. And so the challenges that we're putting in front of the teachers around ensuring that every student who enters their door comes out with the type of education that they would want their own child to have is really what we're faced with. So structure, tearing down these structures, putting things like bridges in place, and ensuring that we have effective communication around what the opportunities are one thing. Ensuring that the teachers have what they need with instructional materials and time to collaborate and really work on changing the equation for all the students who are in front of them is really where the rubber meets the road. And that goes from our students who are the most struggling to our students who are the most advanced, who may experience struggles, and that we need to ensure that those students are still walking away feeling very confident and comfortable with the mathematics that they're engaged with.
Thank you. I did have a question. Can we speak a little bit more about the Bridge program and what that might look like, particularly in comparison to the SMART program you spoke of? I know we've talked about it a bit at the curriculum meetings,
Sure.
but I think it'd be good to hear it in this forum as well.
To describe the biggest difference, SMART was starting from an entry point of a student who had a recognized some recognized gaps in their algebraic thinking and their algebraic understandings, and that when they entered into the algebra course, they may not be at the same level as their peers. And so we're trying to raise the bar for those students in order to get them on level. The difference in the Bridge is that we have students who have some mathematical, who are good solid students, but in order for them to really be able to face the rigors of that one-year course, if we're looking at the one-year course, or to move in order to take that Algebra 1 Part 2 over the summer and be prepared for geometry, that we're working more on some of the mathematical thinking. So it's not just we're worried about whether the student has a strong understanding of integers or fractions or whatever the case may be that would be foundational arithmetic necessary for success in algebra. But it's really when it comes to problem solving, how do you approach a problem, and how do you approach a problem in an effective way, so that in approaching that problem effectively, either individually or in a group, you're using multiple strategies and around that communicate. So those math practices, so the communicating within a team and coming up with a team solution that is an effective solution, and that with that effective solution is generalizable, and I understand what those generalizations are. And those are the types of things that we'd work on in the Bridge program versus the SMART program. The SMART program really was based on a deficit model, though you had students who had some holes. The Bridge program is saying that we're trying to accelerate students, that you are a solid student, but we want to make sure that you're an even better mathematical thinker. And so it's those mathematical skills that will go with you from course to course that we want to be able to build and give you a stronger toolkit.
And will that be with the math specialists or the classroom teachers, or are we not there yet in terms of fleshing out what this might look like?
Well, that's one of those, yes. We're looking at both, actually.
Okay.
And the reason I say we're looking at both, because we do have a structure right now where teachers do have a math supplement, but right now math supplement is really for students who have some math needs. But if we can restructure some of that time in order for it to be Bridge time, that's what we'd like to do. And also when we're looking at how the math specialists are used, generally they're used for that Tier 3 intervention for students. And if we can capture some of their expert time in order to help these students as well, we'd like to do that. So we're still working those pieces out on both ends about where the best place would be and the best personnel. But we want to ensure that every person in the building has access to the types of to the materials and to the type of planning that's necessary in order to accelerate all kids. So that's something that we have built in. One of the things that Mr. Kazmar will be working on is helping us to develop not just the Bridge program, but helping to develop some of the professional development that we provide for all teachers in order to ensure some of that accelerated thinking is built into the coursework. One of the great programs, and I know Mr. Kazmar actually is funny. I became acquainted with this program at the same time that they asked him to come on as a consultant, is the National Math and Science Initiative. And Lmsb, which really back maps, it takes AP and it back maps from AP, but it's around building skills. And so the types of products that you get out of some of the Lmsb work really helps to build mathematical thinking, a wonderful mathematical communication foundation.
Great, thank you. Going back around, anything to my left? Dr. Golden?
I guess I still have two. I'll try to be as succinct as I can. So I'm still see a disconnect between the PSSA scores, where our students are over 90%, overwhelmingly proficient, and the Keystone. And so I'm still not persuaded that our students aren't excelling at math, and the problem is the Keystone, not our students' math skills and knowledge and aptitude and ability. And I guess then the second question is, I also continue to be concerned about this closing doors in terms of college readiness and closing doors in terms of potential college majors that require a level of math, not majors in math or even computer science, but majors in health science or sociology or a range of things that require a certain level of math in order to take those courses, and so therefore students take 5 or 6 years to complete college because they're not ready. And again, I was still hoping you'd do a little bit of digging around about what college expectations are for math before we adopted this program.
Well, I don't think we have. I don't think we have any. The district has not done, to my knowledge, and I could be incorrect, any analysis on the number of years taken of any course at the high school level and its connection to success at the post-secondary level. That is analysis that we began to ask and that we're looking into when we were thinking about what are the skill sets that we want from Lower Merion School graduate. And part of that was understanding if our students are taking a series of courses, and majority of our students exceed our 21 credit requirement. Over 90% of our students exceed that, especially with the number of years of math. We have not done a graduate analysis of when those students go to a post-secondary institution. What are the courses that they are taking? Are they finishing those courses? If they declare a major, are they staying in that? One of the recent research talks about schools who adopt STEM programs, and these are very specific schools who have STEM schools. And part of that is, to what extent are you successful and can quantify why you need a STEM program that's so committed to STEM at the high school level when there's really no analysis on when those students leave your school, what do they do at the post-secondary level? Are they entering into STEM programs freshman year, sophomore year, and then are they having a change of mind saying, maybe STEM's not for me, or they're moving majors? So we don't have that. What we do have is a strong number of our students, disproportionate number of our students who continue to take 4+ years of math, and who do, and the idea is then, should we go and do further analysis on what happens at that post-secondary experience?
That wasn't really my question. My question is, what do colleges
No, I wasn't
want?
trying to answer the
Okay.
question. I was telling you, I'll leave that to Arthur. I was explaining to you that particular process.
And I'm not trying to be to evade this, but there is no one answer for that. It really does depend on the school and the major. So being the second year in the college application process and having studied this pretty thoroughly, not just from a standpoint for my children, but trying to really help a lot of the students here in the district. What you read in the literature from the schools is that students have taken the most rigorous courses that are available, that are appropriate to them, and that they do well in the courses that are presented to them. They do well in the courses that they enroll in. I actually was just taking a look at Georgia Tech, and so top 5 engineering program. So if you're coming in as an engineering major, if you're not coming in prepared to enter calculus, then you're coming in at a deficit. Their expectation is that you'd be able to come in freshman year and take calculus. Many engineering programs would be looking for that. We know that nationally we have an epidemic of students going into 2- and 4-year schools and having to take remedial math courses. The only data that we have in for Lower Merion, which is Montgomery County college type data, would show that the majority of our students, even entering the community college, are entering at college readiness, so that they are entering math courses for which they're getting college credit and continuing on in their math program. So
I don't think this change will impact that.
I do not. I know this change will not impact that opportunity. Before the last change was proposed, where we currently are, the majority of our students were not graduating with calculus on their transcript, but we still had 90% of our students, 90+% going on to enroll in 4-year schools.
I mean, I'd just like to follow up on that, because if you go back to your slides around teacher feedback, which I think sounds like was a big push behind these, considering these changes around the issues around that there was more material that needed to be covered in Algebra 1, that the increase in material is not leaving time to focus on developing mathematical thinking in students, that there were additional grade level time. I mean, these are the reasons.
Yes.
Right, for, so in response to Marissa's questions, these are reasons for proposing the change.
These are the only reason we started considering this, because the teachers came and said, we see some things that we need to address, and that provided the impetus for us to start this process.
So if I can just follow up again on that issue, which I understand that the students who are, so we're shifting our curriculum again in response to student needs, which I think is really important, so that we haven't sort of, we tried something, there were some issues with it, we're, correcting, which I think is really important, and I think is, something that the administration be commended for, trying to address these changes, these issues. There are students, obviously, who are going to, when we talked about the summer program that we would be replacing, the SMART program, there will be students, given our changes, who will be experiencing, who will need additional help in areas that, for whatever reasons, they need that help in, so that there are particular gaps that were identified for whatever reasons.
Yes.
Could come from another school district, who knows? So what are we going to be doing with those students? Is that going to be handled through the math specialists on a kind of individual basis, as opposed to through these the summer program? Just curious about that.
I'll start and say that I think one of the that 3.5-4 hour meeting initially last January that spoke to our current math sequence really makes it extremely difficult for what teachers were seeing, students coming into the district, in addition to our own students. But they began to talk about that. And they say that this math sequence only allows this student to start here. That is not where he or she is at. We didn't have flexibility in terms of placing that particular student. We just said they took a particular assessment, they indicated that in their transcripts that this is where they were supposed to start, and algebra was it, but found really quickly that putting them into that course was more detrimental, and we didn't have an avenue for that. And I think those were some of the things that that came up that we wanted to address. So that is part of the process of this plan, is to address that in terms of how do we address students. And it's a small number, but it's a large enough number that it oftentimes constitutes a class, or majority of the class. And now you have a student who is an 8th grader who just did not come with the prerequisite skill sets, and we're telling teachers, well, this is where he or she has to be, so make it work. And the resources weren't there, and then there were more students coming with that, and realizing that if anything, there needs to be a pathway for students who need that additional support.
And along with that, I'll continue to come back to the types of work we're doing around instruction. And on Thursday and Friday, we had a national consultant come in working with our middle schools, Mike Matos, around interventions and the types of interventions that we're providing for all students versus those that we're providing for some students. And the more that we provide those opportunities for our teachers to work on improving what they already do a really good job in, but giving them additional tools to do that and to be more successful. And once again, Mike Matos, I'm sure got cheers and applause because he was emphasizing the time necessary to do what you're being asked to do. That as long as we are, being very deliberate about providing not just the professional development, but the time to implement for the teachers and the structures for them to collaborate, and the types of coaching that may be necessary in order to make those types of instructional shifts and changes, meaningful. That as we're being very deliberate about that, that we'll continue to see the type of growth that we want to see. This is about growth for everyone. This is, that we had a process that needed to be tweaked. I can say that word now. Yeah, we need to tweak that process.
Right. Well, I mean, I really appreciate the thoughtfulness with which everyone's engaged in this process, from the teachers, the administrators, the whole team. And I think that, we'll continue to do this. I mean, I think that we're continuing to do this. We're looking now at the younger students as well as, I think this is a process, and I think that, I really appreciate that and the effort that you've all put in. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Bonaventura, any additional questions?
No, thank you.
Ms. Pollard?
I just have one quick one, and this is a selfish question. Because I've been away from math a couple of years now, and I do tutor students after school, how can you help me to know if what they're doing is correct as I'm tutoring?
I can introduce you to Peter Casmore. No, no. I mean, one of the great things is that not just providing what the state has provided us, but providing the documentation we've produced as well. At the elementary level, what Nancy and her team have done in putting together all the support structures and making sure that you have full access to all those things. But for you, of course, just sitting down one-to-one consultation to make sure that our students who you're serving, that the programming that you're putting in place is the right type of programming. I mean, it's a couple quick questions you can ask, and we can take a look right away to see if these are the right things and you're doing it the right way. That's I get phone calls from our sending elementary private schools often asking, well, what can we do differently, because we want to make sure that our students are ready for your school when we send them there. And so it's about the community and making sure that we're engaging the community effectively. So that's not a problem. And like I said, I'll send you Peter Casmar.
Can I just jump in with an anecdote? We needed you today. There were 3 adults, a Bryn Mawr College graduate, a Wharton MBA, and myself, who couldn't answer a 7th grade math homework problem at Virginia's tutoring.
Ms. Robinson? I'm good, thank you. Mr. Driscoll? Dr. O'Leary? Thank you very much, team, and Mr. Mitchell and Dr. Marseille. Very well done. So now we will, So now we will move to audience recognition on non-agenda items. If you could sign in with Ms. LaPera and tell us generally where you're from. Hello.
Ruth Jenkins Winwood. This is actually an agenda item. I'd like to go back to discussion of access for students. We have spent millions and millions and millions of dollars on construction, on buses, on teacher salaries, all of these things that I understand are necessary. But when it comes to $800 per course for a summer school student, we need to find a way to fund this, not just because you have free lunch, you get free tuition. There are many students and families who do not get free lunch and cannot afford the $800. And if there is more than one student in a family, that's $1,600. And many of the students have to work during the summer, or the families work in camps and they go away for the summer. I think you need to go back a little bit to the drawing board and find some other solutions to make this more available. Thank you.
Thank you for that comment. Actually, we're going to be asking you really soon, what are your recommendations for that? And I say that seriously because it is part of our evolution with regards to our strategic plan. We know that when we talked about redefining success, we talked about transformative curriculum. We knew that there had to be additional options outside the scope of what we do for students to think differently. And that's going to require a collaborative process. With regards to summer school, this district, I think we should think differently with regards to when students have educational experiences that don't fall within the scope of what we call summer school, but are extremely valuable. They shape who they are as individuals. As a district, are we willing to accept that as a valuable learning experience and give our stamp of approval with that particular process? There are multiple ways in which students can take courses. Are we ready to think differently about that? And the idea that just the same way in terms of opportunity and access, well, unintentionally, by creating some of these summer courses, we're denying access to some students and families because they're unable, for scheduling reasons and other reasons, why they're able to do that. So are there other ways in which we could afford the opportunity? And then, you talk about one of the biggest is the financial cost. And as a district, we've always been mindful about how do we support our families who are unable to do that. What plans can we think about? Who can we partner up with? And I think that's part of the next evolution. So even though we make a commitment to students who are on free and reduced lunch, there has been conversation, and I think it's about the way in which you engage with parents. Because parents say, well, I'm not on free and reduced lunch, but I'm extremely struggling, so I might as well not even talk about it because everyone keeps talking about that. What happens is, though we can't pay for every summer program, we do work with parents who are not on that free and reduced lunch. And we do say, well, what can we begin the process with? How do we put, and it might be not the best solution, we say, well, could you put a payment plan together? Could we stretch this out over a certain number of years? Could we find ways to augment the cost of that program? So we don't want that to be a barrier. We don't want cost to be a barrier, absolutely not. And we don't want access to the courses to be a barrier. So as we think about the strategic plan, it will require us to think anew in terms of additional opportunities that we provide. So we do take that comment well received, and we are thinking differently and trying to do that. And we're going to open the floor very soon to the public in terms of here's some of the ideas we're thinking about. What are you thinking about in terms of how to make this a reality for some of our students? So thank you.
Please.
Good evening. I'm Lorraine Carter from Ardmore. I have a question, actually two. I remember about 2004 or so, Irene Eisen, who was supervisor of math at that time, introduced CPM mathematics to Lower Merion, and it was sort of a bridge program, summer school type thingy at that time. And obviously since then, CPM math has become deeply embedded in our math curriculum, and I see that with this proposal, it'll be eliminated altogether, so it seemed. I have 3 students who graduated from the school district, and I have one who was in CP math, who had the CPM math. He was in college prep math, and he had the CPM program, and I had another who was in honors in advanced placement math. She didn't. So there was a difference in tracks. So I noticed in some of the data points here too that there are some students who did very poorly, and then others who did really very well in the last testing. So I'm wondering to what extent the CPM was ruled out of making a primary impact on poorer performance relative to math, rather than, well, let me rephrase that. So I'm wondering to what extent CPM mathematics impacted the lower performance, and if that were ruled out solely, if it did more negatively impact mathematics, would there now be such a need to switch the math Algebra 1 into 2-year programming, which was, the program is very similar to what it was as CPM was being embedded into the district. I don't know if that made sense, but that's one question. And the other question that I have is, if we're moving into where students would have Algebra 1 longer, over 2 years, which they had a couple of years ago, I'm wondering, will this now eliminate the need for math labs, which we didn't have them years ago when we had the sequence of 2 years math, et cetera, and what would that look like? How would that flesh out if we go into really broadening math for all the students, or for some of the students at least? Okay.
Thank you. I think, and I'll let Arthur or Nancy Akasami talk about CPM. I do want to say with regards to CPM, the question, how does that CPM impact low performance? Good data question. Not sure we can answer that tonight. I do know that upon arrival into the district, there was a lot of conversations about the fluidity in the impact of CPM and in terms of who was adopting CPM. Was it the curriculum? Was it supplement? To what fidelity was that taking place? And I think what we heard resoundingly was from the conversation with teachers is that it may not meet the needs of all of our students, and we need to think differently about the delivery of instruction. With regards to the math labs, we continue to, when Arthur talked about this, this curriculum is always evolving. We continue to analyze the intention, the purpose, and the outcome of math labs. And we're always restructuring that. And we realize that with this sequence, whether we had this sequence or not, we're always thinking differently about the math labs and whether or not they serve their purpose and how we can best maximize it. So that is a good question that we're looking at. But with regards to CPM, Arthur, is there anything you want to add to that CPM curriculum?
Sure. One of the things about the CPM curriculum itself is that when it comes to, as you said, meeting the needs of all students, there is no one program that does meet all needs, and CPM is a, as a reform math program, it's the implementation was, there were some implementation issues with ensuring that it had equal treatment across buildings and grade levels. And the type of maintenance that's required for a program like CPM is very professional development heavy. You are pretty much locked into a sequence of how you do things. And so CPM robs you of a lot of flexibility in putting together a program. The teachers who use CPM and use it with great level of fidelity love the program, but it's not necessarily the content of the program, it's the process of the program. And when we take a look at the types of changes that we're putting in place now and the type of work that we're doing, CPM is really about community and it's about communication. And so if we are embedding that type of mathematics community and that type of mathematics communication in our program overall and ensuring that teachers have access to professional development to do those things well, then no matter what program we use, we'll be able to achieve some of the same types of results. One of the biggest knocks on CPM, though, is the fact that it's very vocabulary and word dense. That if you take a look at a CPM text, it's problem solving and it's a lot of word problems, and it tends to be inaccessible for students who are the most struggling readers without a lot of supplement being added to it. And so in being able to utilize it the way that we would like to utilize a program like that. The teachers definitely see some limitations, and they, over the past few years, there have been other things which have been developed which align better as the Common Core, PA Core, and other things that we have to buy instructional materials based on have evolved. CPM definitely has not evolved at the same rate as those other programs have.
Next speaker, please.
Hi, Crystal Blunt, Ardmore. First, I want to echo with what that lady said about cost. I think we really need to look at that, because some families who just make a little bit too much money for reduced lunch, still, that's a lot to ask somebody, especially since parents aren't really going to have a say, about this program. You're adding a burden onto them without them even being able to say yay or nay, so you might want to think about that. I also want to talk about the elementary school level, and because it all starts there. And so what about those students who are really, really struggling? I didn't see anything up on the screen tonight about those kids that might not even get to where you presented tonight. What does that look like for them? What's their math outcome? And what are you doing to support those students? I also want to talk about the investigations model and how that even feeds into the middle school. Because as we all know, investigations model is a lot of language-based stuff, and for those students who are struggling that way, I would like to have some more information on that and how that applies into the middle school and what that all looks like for those students. And because I know in 4th and 5th grade is when you get that track for that extra math track, that higher end math. So what are you doing for students that aren't there? And what does that look like? And what are your thoughts for that? Just a
Thank you.
Great points. I said earlier that you can't work in a vacuum when you're talking about the sequence. With regards to additional information, that is forthcoming. We made a commitment that when you talk about access or opportunity, we want students to be successful, but there's a pipeline. And we know that starts long before they even get into the school system. But we do know that we need to think differently about that elementary sequence. And we knew that going into this comprehensive conversation, which is why last year around this time, even though we're talking about the algebra for all and the concerns we had, Nancy Consummesa was part of that initial conversation. And I said, I need you to come and listen, because unless we understand, you need a good understanding and hear what these high school teachers are saying and middle school teachers are saying, so that we can think about if indeed we have a sequence that says by the time you get to 7th grade or 6th grade, you're going to have these mathematical concepts, these habits of mind that you have to develop. Well, prior to that, there needs to be an understanding about what that looks like at the elementary level, and how do we prepare students for those particular challenges. Hence the reason why they're subsequently after that meeting, there were elementary teachers involved in the middle school and high school sequence and what you're seeing right now. And we currently are creating a team that's looking at the elementary sequence. And I want to say this, that when we had this conversation started out last year, I want to say that it's more than just about the sequence. And if we're going to talk about the sequence, and you're going to talk about what teachers do every day in class, then you're going to talk about how that impacts student learning. Then you talk about social cultural identity. Then you talk about cultural proficiency. So all of those were conversations where I was like, well, I have no problem talking about the math sequence. That is not the end-all and be-all of that process. There's a tremendous amount of professional development that goes into that. There's a series of skill sets that, do students really believe that they're math able in 4th grade? Do they see themselves as being competent? Are they experiencing success? And that's been part of that K through 12 continuum. So we are looking forward to sharing that with the board moving forward around what we're doing at the elementary level to support the work that we're hoping to move forward with the middle sequence, and the work that we're asking our 9th, 10th, and 11th grade teachers at the high school to think differently about as well.
And as a thing for Mrs. Pollard, I was listening to the struggle to answer that 7th grade math question, and a thought came to me with all the technology that the district has at hand, maybe asking a math teacher to model that, teach it, and they video it, and you put it up on a computer, and then you would know how to solve that math problem.
We're working on a platform that allows us to do that. We have teachers who are individually doing that, and that's part of the prototyping that we've talked about with the board around our strategic plan. So though we have a small number, we're hoping that we can do that. But I'm sure Arthur would have no problem recording himself.
Right. And not just 7th grade, but on, you know, some of those questions at the elementary school level for investigations, you know, if you came through the system when some of us did, we don't do math that way, so you have to reteach your brain how to do those problems. So, you know, you might want to consider that K to 12.
Thank you very much. Just one quick announcement before we adjourn. The ISC will have its meeting tomorrow at Harridan High School, and it's a presentation on mindfulness, so at 9:30 a.m. So I wanted to make sure that folks were aware of that. I'm going to try to be there because I want to be a little more mindful. And with that, we are adjourned.